Headphones. And before we get formally started with the meeting, though, there's two things I want to say. One is I want to just mention the sad passing of Jimmy Carter, and I had no idea what a good man he really was. I knew he was a good man, but oh my goodness. So, and then I also want to just acknowledge what is relevant to us for climate change. And by the way, I think Jimmy even did some work on climate change, early stage stuff. And I also just want to mention the sadness I think we all have for what's going on in the LA fires, which is in part, I don't know to what degree, but certainly climate change is playing a role in this, in the weather change, and who knows what's really going on totally up there, but down there. But anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge that, you know, I feel their pain, and I think we all do. So, all right. So let us begin. Welcome, and I guess let me call the meeting to order. And so I want to welcome the people that are listening and on Zoom, and all of the folks here in the room that are part of the public. And so since the meeting is now called to order, will the secretary take the roll call?
Manny Beckelli.
Here.
Bill DeVincenzi.
Present.
Glenn Garfunkel.
Glenn's up there somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Remote.
Yeah, remotely. Ryan Lorico.
Here.
Lucia Marquez. Okay. Ruth Merino.
Here.
Karen Nelson.
Here.
Victor Neumeier.
Here.
Philip Remaker.
Present.
Tracy Wang. Here. Thank you.
Great. So we do have a quorum. So we have a quorum of commissioners present, so we shall continue on. And I know that you've all received the agenda. Are there any additional orders of the day for the agenda that anyone would like to offer? No? Okay. All right. We have a full meeting today, but I think it's really doable. So let's see. I don't think we need a motion to accept because we don't have any new orders of the day, so we will just continue on. There is no, Ann, is there anything for the public record today? So we'll now move on to open forum. And this is where the members of the public get an opportunity to speak on any item that doesn't appear on the agenda, and but is within the subject matter of this advisory commission. So is there anyone from the public that has something that they'd like to say at this time? Okay, moving on. And now on for the consent calendar. You received them November 19th meeting minutes. Are there any corrections? No? Oh, this is going to be a really great meeting. If there aren't any corrections, then the minutes stand as approved. So now the next order of business, are there any reports and information only?
Just the 6 month look ahead.
Vote on the minutes. They
I
haven't
think we
been
have
approved yet.
previously, yeah.
We have
I think we
previously.
have previously
Yeah,
voted, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes for the November 21st meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
No, I think that it was fine, but that was good that you did that, but I think they were approved at the last meeting. Is that correct?
No,
No,
these
they
were
weren't.
from the
Oh,
minutes
okay.
from the last
Okay,
meeting, yeah.
got it. Okay, thank you. All right, any old business? All right, moving on to new business, we're gonna,
Wait a minute, what about
oh, sorry about that.
item 5,
Item,
Climate Smart 6 month look ahead?
oh boy, I'm just really getting ahead here. Let us look at those reports for I think Climate Smart 6 month was in that. So has everyone had a chance to review it? And are there any questions? And Ann, I guess you would be able to answer the questions? Does anyone have any questions for this? I'll give you a chance to look at it.
I have a question. Does this just pertain to climate smart, or does this include clean energy?
It includes clean energy, yeah. And DOT and
Okay.
PBCE we are all on there as well. To the best of my individual ability.
Any other thought, Bill?
So, this question has been raised by Vic and myself before regarding the necessity for such a large reserve. We've taken it over 6 months, it's now about 7.5 months. And my understanding is that we can respond to changes in a month, right? Or 6 weeks or whatever. I remember there was a pretty quick turnaround where we could get the rates implemented. So why would you need a 7-month reserve when you can respond to crazy things that might happen, rate rise, within a month? And the reason I'm raising the issue is because I'm concerned about public scrutiny. And if people see a reserve of that size and we're raising the rates again, it's like, well, wait a minute, what are we doing?
I'm wondering if, Bill, if that might be best to save that question for, we're going to have Sounds Like Clean Energy and Lena talk about the rates. Do you want to save that question for then? Would that be more appropriate, or?
We're going through it right now.
No, we're in old business.
We're up here. I think we're
We're in
doing climate
attachment
smart.
A, Karen.
No, we're not
That's
there.
attachment B.
Yeah, that's attachment B, right.
There's
That's
a,
confusing because it says
yeah, well,
attachment A on the
but the
front.
attachment B is in the, B, yeah, so
That's okay.
the attachment A is just the calendar.
But it's a great question.
Come on, don't confuse me with the facts.
Well, that's my phrase, no, sorry. Okay, so I think that means that, let me see.
Okay,
We've done
I can
this
wait.
climate march 6 month ahead. No other questions for the 6 month ahead.
Not a question, but just sort of hot off the presses. So
Okay.
these two things on February 11th have been moved. The rates has been moved to February 25th. And this next one, the amendment to long-term agreement, that's moving to March 4th. Powers that be moved us along. So
So the first 11th moves to the 20th.
25th,
25th,
Okay,
and the next one to March 4th.
and which is that? February
Here you
11th?
go, there you go.
yeah, there.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks. 225 and 34. Okay, thank you, guys.
Zach, curious, the city, the T&E committee, it doesn't discuss what we're talking about today, or it did it in the past?
It does not.
Okay, does it not discuss it at all, or does it has it
We
already?
have historically never brought the rates there.
Okay,
I'm not sure why, but we haven't.
provide question tradition, huh? Thanks.
Otherwise, the dates look good, right? Other than those two changes? Okay. Great, well, thanks. Any other thoughts or questions about the 6 month plan? If not, I don't think, we just can change those dates. We don't need to have a motion to approve that, do we?
Yeah, no, and, they'll be updated, I guess, they'll come to pass by the next meeting, or at least some of them will, but.
Okay, good. Well, we don't have any old business, so we'll move on to new business. And I think Michael is here.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael. And you want to talk really briefly about the Climate Adaptation and Resiliency Plan.
Sure. I have a few words. So, hello, Commission. I'm Michael Gonzalez. I am an Environmental Program Manager with the city's Environmental Services Department. In June of 2023, the city received a grant for approximately $650,000 from the state to develop a climate adaptation and resilience plan. This plan aims to address the city's climate vulnerabilities and enhance resilience for critical infrastructure and vulnerable communities. The development of this plan was managed by the city's manager's office through the end of this year and is now managed by the Environmental Services Department. Some accomplishments to date include consultant procurement and contracting, establishing a working team comprised of Valley Water staff and city staff from various departments, and the development of guidance and technical documents. Over the next 6 months, January through June 2025, we'll be focusing on community engagement and drafting the adaptation plan. We hope to have the public review draft released in July of 2025. With this information, we ask that the climate adaptation and resilience plan be added to the work plan so that the commission can receive a full report in May of 2025, which will be prior to the release of the public review drafts. Please let me know if there are any questions.
So basically, we wanted to just run it by the commission that it's okay to add this to the work plan for the May meeting, because then we'll take it to Transportation and Environment to amend the work plan, so.
Great idea.
Yeah. Now, you had packed full, great information in what you just said, and I noticed you had it already typed up.
Yeah.
Is it fine if when you send out the minutes for this meeting, that we could get that? It doesn't have to be perfectly reworked, just those highlights I think would be valuable for me to have.
Yeah, I
I'm
can
sure
reach
all
out
of
to
us.
Michael and maybe we can add like a little summary to the minutes or something that.
Yeah, just my speaking points. I don't want to forget anything like my name or,
That would be great.
yeah.
Fantastic, so
problem.
we can refer to it.
Okay.
Great. All right, and is there any action to be taken on this?
We can vote to add it to the work plan just to sort of solidify it, but.
Would someone like to make a
Okay.
motion to that
I'll
effect?
move.
Seconded.
So the motion is made and seconded to add this to the upcoming work plan.
For May, for May doesn't matter, for May.
Right, is there any, all in favor? Aye. Against? No? Ayes win? In favor? All right, so we're moving on to, I think our largest presentation of the evening is the briefing on the 2025 Power Mix. And Lena Williams is gonna deliver that for us. And Lena, would you like to have Q&A happen as you talk through it, or would you rather have people hold their questions for the end?
So I know that some members of the commission may have read ahead some of the presentation points, and I know some of the questions might relate directly to the previous conversations that you guys had about the reserves. So I don't mind taking questions as we go. But I hope to still leave time though for questions regarding
At the
the
end.
overall thing,
Okay,
as you all see fit.
okay.
Well, thank you, Leticia, for playing. If you don't mind, I want to come over your way, not because I can see everything on the screen, but more specifically because I can't. And then it helps me see your guys' faces, if you don't mind. So for anybody who hasn't seen me here in a while, I'm Lena Williams. I'm the Deputy Director of Account Services, Marketing, and Communications. I know that you know Zach, and we have Ross joining us on the other side who helped actually run all the numbers. So I have a feeling that some of the questions that you have are probably might go to both of them, so they're here to help us with that. Okay, next slide. So what I'm going to cover during our presentation is the close of our calendar year 2024, just a financial update. There are a couple of updates that can inform how the rates are being recommended to be put forward the remainder of what is our fiscal year and the first half of our calendar year. I'll share a little bit about the rate design methodology. Some of you are already familiar, but I know we have members of the commission that are here for the first time. And then talk about the rate strategy as it was put forward based on kind of using the closing of our last year and then what we have planned going forward. And then just talk about next steps with regards to the recommendation and going to council, as Zach mentioned, which will be a little bit later in February. We were bumped to that next meeting. Next slide. So once I know you guys have had some budget conversations previously, but once everything was completed at the close of the year, some of the numbers changed slightly. So as you can see from our actual versus what had been and are expected at the close of calendar year 2024, the method that we presented previously that had kind of that better, worse, and that kind of middle range methodology, we did perform, as you've mentioned, or you kind of called out, where we performed a little bit better than we anticipated at the end of the year, but it still means that the reserves or that recommendation on the reserves is there going into the methodology for the upcoming year, because we still don't know necessarily what happens on the market for the long term, and we know what we can have the room to adjust to. So we do expect to have an increase in the cash by 62% from 2023 to 2024, and because the costs have increased, and those are the larger costs, not just the rates, not just the response to the rates that we actually put in place, but also saying what's happening for the price of energy on the market, what's happening for Rex and RA, and a lot of those things. Actually, it was the auxiliary pieces that seemed to actually have the biggest impact on pricing in the year. Then we also ended out in the close of the year having a little bit less revenue than expected because, mild weather for us means that there are no spikes in demand that are coming that we may have budgeted or planned for or purchased for in advance. And those have impacts on how the year ends out.
Lena, curious, so is it mostly, which is it more? Is it mostly fossil fuel or clean energy that's going up the most or the most rapidly?
Wow, okay, so that's a good question. I'm gonna leave it for Zach and for Ross on that one, because really it seems to be more the RAs and the RECs actually for the renewable energy that have the unprecedented demand and pricing spikes, so not even the energy itself, which is why it's the things that we didn't really account for originally because we haven't seen pricing happen in this way. Did I say that correctly, you guys? Hold on one second. Ross was gonna add to that.
Just the one thing to add is in 2024 we saw the highest price we've ever seen for resource adequacy, easily 2 times what it was 3 or 4 years ago, and it's one of the challenges is just the lack of supply of resource adequacy. So that is a component of our power resources, and it's definitely affected our costs in 2024.
And most resource adequacy, to answer your question more directly, most resource adequacy comes from gas plants today in California.
Next slide.
No,
Oh,
quick
sorry.
question, just a clarifying question.
Yes.
The asterisk on operating reserve in days talks about a trailing 12-month cost. What is the specific 12-month or quarters that are in the numbers there?
So for calendar year 2023, it's the 4 calendar quarters of calendar year 2023. For calendar year 24, it's the 4 calendar. So it's those respectively.
So it's the 4 quarters of 2023 and the 4 quarters of 2024. Gotcha. And so gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. And there's a little rounding there, 1.1, 1.4. You don't, if you divide the top row by the bottom row, you don't get exactly, but yeah.
Very close.
Gotcha.
Thank you. So next slide. So this kind of comes into what we were just talking about in terms of the things that are actually built into our design, and we're identifying what we're looking to charge our customers and cost. And sorry, I just noticed that some of these are popping over some of the notes at the bottom. So I'm just going to say what this says right here, which is that PG&E rates, for example, don't necessarily represent the cost to serve San Jose Clean Energy customers, which is why we go out and have started to, since we implemented the cost of service modeling, determining what the cost is for us to actually serve our customers, as opposed to what we used to do originally, which was take a look at what PG&E is doing and just subtract from that and say we just want a discount. Now we're actually factoring in all these other factors to determine what we're really going to charge our customers. And that also means that it does also take a little bit more time for us to crunch the numbers, because we're looking at things like what our costs are to serve those customers. We're looking at that when compared by customer class. So that's why when you look at a rate sheet, it just doesn't say minus X, right? It's always a little bit of a variation, which is why some of these numbers that we'll talk about have a range. But of course, we're looking at the forecasted cost. We're looking at our financial goals, and that includes things like making sure that we've met our rate reserve targets, for example, or if we have specific budgetary, and we'll talk about some of that, goals for programs or other operating costs that we're saying we want to be able to put into effect during an upcoming calendar year. We may factor those costs in here. And we do also look at our forecast in terms of what is projected on the PG&E side, but those things can sometimes change or move around. And I see you have.
Yeah. Do you have, could you clarify a little more detail on the customer classes? And are there some customer classes that are functioning better, closer to your budget anticipation than other classes?
I mean, true cost to serve. So that can be the case. So we're talking about residential, non-residential, like industrial or commercial. So every type of rate that you could have on a PG&E bill, there's going to be an actual cost to serve customers in that group. And so when you're talking about that modeling, it could be okay, if they're a large commercial industrial customer, because they're buying their power in bulk, think Costco, right? We know they're using so much that cost to serve tends to be significantly lower, for example. So yes, there are some rate classes that do better than others. And when we're doing our rate design, we're looking to say, okay, how far off are they? Can we put it out or have the rates match this way? Do we want to make adjustments because we know that we have other budgetary concerns that we also need to factor into how we're setting that rate, which is why they don't get published the second rate PG&E's numbers get published. We are finalizing our budgetary items, our forecasting, and then we build out the model, and we include, of course, the priorities that we have as an agency to also meet into.
Are you comfortable sharing which classes are closer to your anticipated rates than others? Are you comfortable sharing that with us?
I was gonna say, we haven't done it directly before, but since it's a similar methodology, I would say, to how PG&E, for example, sets their models, it almost kind of aligns with a few exceptions, right? The larger commercial
Karen, I think
classes.
from your question, it sounds like there's maybe a slight miscommunication. So some customers cost more to serve. So a customer who comes home and turns on the air conditioning at 6 o'clock every day, that's a really expensive time to serve them and to buy power. And so serving that kind of customer tends to be residential. That's more expensive than, say, someone who's a school, right? And their load. So we can say that, the reason one of the reasons that residential customers have higher rates is because they're more expensive to serve. If your question though is like, how close are we getting to, we estimated this, but the actual is that, I don't think we're necessarily, I don't think our error or variance is so different for any of them, so.
Well, that's good. That's good that your analysis is working, so that's great.
Plenty, sometimes, even a, broken clock is
Right. Okay, so,
Thanks.
all right, so next slide. So I like questions along the way, it actually is a few more things. Okay, so in terms of our cost to serve and our strategy for going into 2025, so let's go into the next slide, if possible. Yay! Okay. So this one, you've seen this table a couple of times each year where we're really breaking down in terms of what our largest costs are. Buying power obviously is still our largest cost, but in power supply costs, we didn't kind of make it that granular. But that still includes the other things that Ross mentioned, like resource adequacy or RECs and things like that. Those are, I see, I'm getting a nod. I'm not sure if that means you had something else to add. Yeah, okay. So that includes the total cost. So we didn't kind of go all of those particular line items, but that's the total overall cost. Operations, it's pretty steady consistently. And then our investment in other revenues. So one thing I'd like to confirm in terms of this going down a little bit, I know that part of that had to do with lighter energy demand than we anticipated originally, because that's been going down slightly over time, but I didn't know what the other factors were that were impacting that.
You're asking about a year-over-year cost
In
decrease?
terms of the decrease right here.
Yeah, so year-over-year, I'll let Zach field out.
You mean, why is this negative?
Yeah.
No, it's just negative because that's like,
Continuing.
that's reducing, that's revenue to us, that's
Oh, got it.
reducing our,
That's it, okay, got
But
it.
Ross, why don't you talk about year over year? These are much lower than they were last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why our costs and our rates are decreasing in 2025 versus 24 is for a few things. One, we've entered into long-term power purchase agreements, and those facilities have come online in 2024. We're gonna have the full year benefit of that in 2025. You probably also heard about the prepay PPA, which is basically bond issuance that we're using the proceeds for those to prepay for these long-term power purchase agreements, giving us better pricing. So those are two of the factors that are impacting our 2025 costs.
And I know we presented it once again in that better expected worse. So, I mean, we have been historically, or at least in the last couple of years, been performing in that better category, but of course, anything could change. Next slide.
Lena, I do have a question. The item, we're talking about revenue requirements, and revenues are, the requirements are based on costs.
Yes.
That's the spirit of it, right? Net of revenue, or investment revenue. The contribution to reserve, 8 million there, that's a cost in this accounting. Bill and I are sort of singing the same song a little bit here, more than a little bit maybe. Where'd the 8 million come from? Is that to meet some of the obligations that were set aside with the reserve policies, or where did the 8 come from?
So that's really more about our obligation as part of our banking agreement to show essentially that our revenues are not less than costs and a little bit above. So that you can think of, that's equivalent to that's our net income, if you will, that 8 million.
So your banking agreement, these are people loaning you money, or?
We have access to a line of credit, but what we use it for on a daily basis is letters of credit, which we post to power suppliers, RA suppliers, and that's what we use that line for, that facility for.
And do they set the 8, or that's our vision of what they want to see?
So we have ratios that we need to comply with, debt service coverage ratios, and so this 8 number is, plus or minus the lowest that net income can be that will allow us to continue to.
We have debt?
So the agreement, the way that they calculate this so-called debt service coverage ratio includes all fees related to the agreement, letters of how much, the face value of letters of credit that are outstanding, so on and so forth. But no, we do not have any debt outstanding.
Okay, I'm sorry, but it sounds a little strange that the banks, want us to have reserves because related to the debt that we don't have, and they're, so they want us to add 8 million to this, or they want to see us have rates that add 8 million to the expectation. For whatever reason, it sounds like it doesn't really make sense, but it is what it is, and we need to have 8 million. Is that real?
So, in a word, yes. They want to see a positive business. They want to see a business that is not losing money. And, we could lose 8 million. If I tried really hard tomorrow, we could lose 8 million. That's really, over the course of the year is not much. To me, that's basically the break-even number. And so that's where we are.
But then, does that mean if we roll back some of the reserves, were they going to absolutely freak out if we decide to do sort of something you allude to later here and have a credit or something?
So we're still, the idea of sort of a bill credit, we're still understanding the accounting treatment for such a thing. We're understanding how the ratings agencies would view such a thing, and again, specific to the banking agreement, how that would be contemplated within these ratios that we're supposed to comply with. But so that's why we're not doing it tomorrow, because we're still trying to understand, make sure that we don't outsmart ourselves with this credit and taking down the reserves. But that's a consideration.
It's really going to be catch-22 or something really bizarre if we live in a world, because of these banking agreements, we're only allowed to collect and build our reserves, and we're not allowed to sort of do something with them.
No, but understood.
And I hope that that's not a sustained relationship, if that's what it's requiring, just for the record.
Yeah, point taken.
Okay, I'm sorry, Lena. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's okay. These are excellent questions, and so I enjoyed listening to them.
Just an additional comment. So last year, our reserves increased by 47 million. At 183 to 231.
I think 47 days.
Yeah, we got
it's a whole lot more million, unfortunately.
A whole lot more million.
For where you're going, a whole lot more million.
Okay, yeah, because I'm trying to relate that to the 8 million. So this is dollars.
Yes.
All
Did you?
Yeah, I'm really curious about the lines of credit. And I understand, how that could impact the overall picture, financial picture, but how are you doing? Can you also share with us, how are you doing with the lines of credit? And sort of generally, are those from, who are you, who are the lines of credit to? Are they usually,
Sure.
what kind of
Yeah.
vendors?
So this is council approved. This is disclosed in all of our statements. We have a single banking agreement with JP Morgan. The total size of that agreement is 250 million. That's big. That's big. We may well look to shrink that down at some point. There was a time when the CPUC, the Public Utility Commission, was there was a proceeding involved that it was called POLR, P-O-L-R, Provider of Last Resort. And the investor-owned utilities in our territory, PG&E, has to, regardless, if a load-serving entity like a CCA or a direct assets provider goes away, all those customers need to continue to be able to have electricity. And so that if they are, quote, involuntarily returned to the POLR or PG&E, PG&E needs to be made whole to cover those costs in the short term. Longer term, they collect rate revenue, but in the shorter term, they might have a squeeze, especially our particularly badly capitalized utility, PG&E. They can't just go to the bank because they're tapped out. So there began this whole proceeding at the PUC talking about how the different CCAs and other load-serving entities were going to need to post larger security to PG&E just in case we go belly up. And there was a time that it looked like they were looking for 100 million letter of credit, or maybe 150. And so that got our attention. And so we went out and we got this big credit facility in case the PUC did the worst thing, because we were going to have to comply within 60 days. It didn't end up going like that. And so now we're in the process of we need to sort of shrink this thing down because we pay for it. But we have one facility and we use it. We could someday tap break glass and run up a line on it. But what we use it for today is issuing letters of credit.
I see, okay. Thank you.
And right now there are $15 to $30 million of face value letters of credit posted to different power suppliers. Some number.
So it's mostly power suppliers, okay.
100% power suppliers. It's
Okay.
not my family. It's power suppliers. That's what we would get.
Really? Great, well, thank you for that clarity, I appreciate it.
Sure.
See, aren't you glad? All right, okay, so next slide. Okay. So this is where we landed on our scenarios or options for 2025, and this is for the calendar year. We know that there may be more than one rate change or adjustment that we would need to account for in March and or in July. So just know that this is not that this can be a bit of a moving target. So we're responding to the various levels of contribution to reserves, and so that has resulted in various discounts versus PG&E that were considered on our side. But where we landed ultimately, once again, in that nice column right on the front end, is that we anticipate up to a 7.5% discount, and we'll still be able to actually meet our financial goals in terms of hitting the positive net income and growing the reserves and ending the year with and I know there's still a conversation about the operating reserves, but with 249 days of operating reserves, so we would be above goal. So that's only looking at it as calendar year if we're starting with these rates starting March 1st, but we do anticipate there'll be other rate changes. So know that these numbers are going to change. PG&E already has something posted that could have some anticipated changes that would happen again over the summer. Last year, we didn't go to council with a mid-year rate adjustment until August. And so what we end up with when we bring this end of year update to you is always what kind of averaged out or became the actuals at the end of the year with all of those rate adjustments included. So this is just our snapshot at the start of the year with an effective date of March 1st. PG&E's new rates, though, are already in effect. They went into effect on January 1st.
Okay, so these are a little different than what went out in the package.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Uh,
And I meant to say that, that there was an adjustment to some of the analysis when we were able to close out the calendar year 2024, so there were some budgetary adjustments.
So we'll resend these and we'll repost them on the
Yes.
website. Apologies
And-
that we didn't
And it
clarify
was
that.
distributed to Leticia, but she didn't get a chance to actually add it to the website.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
So the first, you may have already said this and I was zoned out. I apologize if that's the case, but just want to understand, the discount to PG&E is sort of a discount to what we now believe are going to be PG&E's rates.
right.
With those particular discounts, then we get the revenues that we would see on the next line.
Yes.
With those revenues and the costs from the prior expected scenario, the middle one,
Yes.
they would then see the resulting contributions to reserves that are now less, okay, than they were in the earlier version, but still, up to maybe 20, 8 to 42 million. The 8 was sort of a minimum that we felt we needed to need based on the discussion we held on the previous slide. Okay, so at least we're covering that, so we don't want to do a discount more than 7.5. And the result is we'll expect to have between 325 million and 359 million at the end of this calendar year. This is subject to what kind of rate discounts, and that the costs are 1.3 million a day based on some of the stuff that Ross said, because we've got more under contract now and we're, okay. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
Right.
it isn't a range, I mean, depending on what council approves, we're gonna recommend the leftmost scenario. This is not a better, worst.
Yeah, I got you there.
Okay.
Yeah, these are choices on how much rate
Yes, that's right.
reduction.
Yep.
And the 0 means we leave the rates where they are now.
No, the 0 means parity to PG&E.
Okay, okay. Got it. So the PG&E's change, we need your next slide before we know what it did to the results of the rates. I'm gonna let Lena continue with
No,
this fine story.
It's good
Thank
for
you.
me because I learned like I said, I learned something new every time.
Yeah, so no, that's good because I thought they were better and you had just left off the, so those are just choices.
Those are the choices.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
or anything in between, we're just showing.
Yeah, but
I
I thought it was like better, worse, whatever.
Well, hopefully it's better to know that it's choices
Yeah.
and we're trying to recommend the higher
Yeah.
discount.
Okay.
Next slide. So, one thing to point out, just so that you know, that is the analysis on the green source and does not include, when we're talking about that average discount, does not include actually SJ Cares. So SJ Cares customers would also still have that additional 10% discount. It'd be a discount off of the green source rate. The total green adder would remain the same for all rate classes. And then the PCIA and franchise fees were included, so we're trying to pull in or present the all-in numbers.
And FFS stands for?
That's the franchise fee.
Franchise fee
Okay.
surcharge.
Surcharge, sorry.
Okay.
I'm just making up words now, making up my own acronyms. I know it is easier to see when you stand. So the program costs, still once again, the recommended program dollar allocation for the year did not include any SJ Cares, did not include the SJ Cares discount in the total, so did not include additional purchases of carbon-free attributes and did not include any additional costs for rec contracts.
Just to clarify, the SJ Cares, the costs related to SJ Cares are included in everything else, that's not in
Sorry.
another whammy, but the 7 million that we're proposing to spend in programs which by the way is about the same dollars that we talked about for calendar year 24. That 7 million isn't going to SJ Cares. It's 7 million, quote, free and clear for
other
residents,
things. Yeah, for additional
and
things.
businesses, yeah.
And what was this, why the discussion about, were we considering purchasing more carbon-free attributes or more RECs? Was that associated with our power content?
So, yeah, so this, what this case and these costs represent is just going with what we have. It's not, so we could, and we'll talk about that, that's one of the next slides, is like if we did want to do more short-term to green things up, that's an option, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know, it's no problem, because there are more options that are available. And I think we kind of, this time last year was the first time we kind of had it presented more than one option. And everybody seemed to like kind of the dialogue that came out of that, so we wanted to bring other options to the group. Next slide. And everything's going slow. So, sorry for the lag, and sorry this is cut off just a little bit here, but just kind of gives you the visual of what our actuals and our discounts have been over time. So this would be our second greatest discount to customers, and that would be providing that discount to all customer classes. As mentioned in the last slide, this graph does not include the additional discount that our SJ Cares customers received. And of course, it's still pending council approval. So like I said, the moving target part means that there may be a couple other things that could get thrown our way between now and February. But on the comparison to the PG&E rates, those are final, and then the additional analysis is underway right now. And you have a question?
Yeah, Lena, this might be totally off base, apologize if it is, but since there's less PCIA pressure right now, then I'm curious if that somehow impacts our rates. And if so, why are we now with less pressure of the PCIA, why are we more closely aligned with PG&E rates as opposed to being like what we were down in, a far greater differential like in 19 and 20?
Here, when that was at 11%, right there, I only see once.
No, so
19 and 20 was, we were actually costed more.
So these,
Yeah.
Maybe I'm
these
reading
are
it
sort of
wrong.
just artificially where they are. The number is what's important, not the distance from the bar.
Oh, okay.
But so
Oh,
the
okay.
PG&E, if you can just, so the, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So
Yeah, I understand.
this is PG&E's rate,
Right,
the blue dot. And then this
Right.
bar, this is ours.
right.
This is PCIA, so the sort of net of us relative to PG&E, you can see we're much closer to PG&E, much closer, more expensive,
Oh,
more
I
expensive,
see. Oh, okay.
below, more below, the most below.
Oh, I see. I'm reading it wrong. Okay.
And the rate we're charging is the black bar.
Correct.
And
Right.
the amount that our customers, we are gonna be paying PG&E because of the PCIA is that little box. You add the number in the box to the number in the black bar, and it's the number on the previous page of the 13.8 or whatever.
Oh,
Correct.
okay,
The
got it.
rate. Got it? Okay. I'm a puzzle master or something. But it's
I was gonna say,
complicated.
clear as
There's a
mud.
lot of moving parts. When
But I get
when
it.
I look at this,
Yeah.
over time, I see that as a San Jose Clean Energy customer, if I were an average customer, and these are a mix of industrial, all sorts of rates, right? These are not just the residential, this is
Mhm.
some kind of composite that no one will pay. So first year, about break even. Second year, about break even. Third year, as a San Jose Clean Energy customer, I paid more than I would have paid if I'd stayed with PG&E. The fourth year, considerably more. Finally, we get to the fifth year and I come out a little ahead. And the sixth year, counting right, I'm coming out a little more of ahead. I'm guessing I'm negative through that sixth bar. Just visualizing, right, the distances. And only until this last bar do I start coming out ahead as a San Jose Clean Energy customer. Zach, is that a reason, or Ross, is that a reasonable representation of the history and what San Jose Clean Energy has done for or to its customers?
Yeah, those years where we were 11% had really impacted our competitiveness.
Yeah, that was a bad, and that was when we had negative revenues. That's when we went to the bank, went to have the city help back us. And it was only at the beginning of 2022 that we then had the rate increase, which has been where the growth in reserves started piling in. And since then, the reserves have grown a lot. The customers haven't gotten anything out of it until this last year by the smidge that you sort of see there.
Wow, thanks for clarifying. Wow.
Can I do I'm gonna say one glass half full thing though. With the exception of our care and fair customers who have never paid more.
Yeah, the care customers would have gotten a deal with PG&E as well, but they got a better deal with us starting 3 years ago, or, right?
Increased deal, yes.
Yeah. So it started working out for the care customers sooner.
Yes.
Yes, because they were at a break even for a while, but they didn't have an 11%.
So the customers who weren't care actually are further in the hole because it all averaged out in these numbers, correct?
No, these are, this is excluding the care
Care and fair.
effects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Screens.
I
Okay.
think the way you summarized
These are
it,
rates, not revenues. That makes sense.
the
Okay.
way you
Thank
summarized it initially, I think is the right way to think about it.
Okay.
Okay, next slide.
I still have to explain this.
Did you have another question?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. So some of the options or other options that are also available, and I think it came out when we were talking in the slide earlier when we said that if we did not include, for example, purchasing additional RECs or improving the power content. So these do give some examples. So in terms of the pricing, should we want to, for example, increase our renewable power content here? Oh, sorry, and I didn't realize that was all touchscreen. I knew it, but I didn't remember until I touched it. And then the pricing and improving affordability, so perhaps offering additional discounts or increasing, for example, our SG Cares discount. So if we wanted to consider some of those other options. And then, of course, increasing energy programs additionally by another 2 million. And I believe we have in our next slide a breakdown that includes some of the things that could be done with that if we added that 2 million.
I didn't realize we had gone to 61% renewable last year then?
So we didn't reach 61% last year, but we are anticipating wanting to achieve that in this year.
61?
61.
Sorry,
And
so
then-
2024, the dust is still settling.
Oh, yeah,
So
sorry.
Oh,
I
okay,
think
but it was
it's gonna
60,
be
right?
60 or so.
Oh, okay, I was just wanted to clarify that.
2023, which is the last one sort of on record, that was like 55, 56. We came in a little low.
So then if we come in like around 61, close to 61, then we could go to 62. But I mean, that would be a choice, right? That's what this is.
This is an example, yeah.
So we're proposing to council 62 because we're feeling confident about 62
Oh, okay, okay,
for 2025.
right, okay.
And then some potential pricing improvements, improving the discount for green source, and a 1% improvement to the SJ Cares discount, both kind of penciled out as options here. And then programs, I think that's more detail in the next slide here. Can you go to the next? Oh, there it is. I like that they call it the supercharged scenario.
Alina, so then,
Did I skip a slide?
no, you did not,
No.
but I just want to clarify that when we add a percent, would that, the discount to PG&E, would that be 7.5% or 8.5%? Or am
So
I
we're
off
talking about a full
completely?
percent, that would be 8.5.
Okay, that we could.
If
possibly-
we elected that as an option, that's
Okay,
what the
okay.
price point would be. And then on the previous slide, one of the other options, it said potentially adding $2 million, additional $2 million to the customer program so that we could actually expand more programs here within battery storage, expanding peak rewards, Eco Home Rebate, EV incentive. And it does say already what the projected or estimated impact, what could be achieved with it's projected to be achievable with those dollars.
So,
So we already have these programs, we are going to do them, they've already been approved by council, but that additional $2 million would allow us to expand so that we're able to actually allocate.
Above and beyond
additional-
this.
Go above and beyond what was already presented.
so this is above the 2 million.
Yep, that's what they're calling it, supercharged. This is, no, sorry, adding that, as we're saying with that 2 million, adding that 2 million to what is already approved.
This is above the 7.1 million
Oh,
that
that's
was in
already
the
in
numbers
place.
we.
Okay,
And that would be just a simple 2 million transfer from what would be the reserves total to this program. So ultimately, unless we change the rates, or else we're talking about changing the rates and leaving the reserves. What,
Yeah, we are not really saying
Is it-
changing every single, not all things, but these are what's been proposed, yeah.
I think our recommendation to council would be to take that, to add it to the rates. That we would still want to target that 8 million. So that means we need to add it to the rates.
but, and the 8 million though is the sort of a worst case minimum, right? I mean, the 8 million came from the worst case scenario. After we got the 8 million, then we stopped talking about worst cases, we started talking about choices. Right, so the 8 million is sort of a minimum amount, but that's only if the worst case scenario, otherwise we're gonna come in with more. And that's why it was sort of 8 million to, 42 million on those
That 8 million
funds.
would cover, right, the 7 million, that 7 and some change, it's already approved. Or includes that. I should say when that calculation was done, to say that 8 million was the minimum, that was with.
8 million was sort of the excess revenue above all of the costs, including the 7.
Including it, yeah.
If that 7 goes to 9,
And now it's
Then
10. I mean, sorry, going backwards, right? Six.
then that 8 would go to 6. And in order to
Sorry.
keep it to 8, we would need to get more revenue.
We'd have to raise the rates to do this
Yes,
and still be happy with the things that
Yes.
we are somewhat controversial, but are the way it is.
right. Now, it could be the council takes a different approach and from the dais says, no, we can do this and not 8.7 or not 8.6. And
But then you pull out the banker and says the banker won't let you do this. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can you explain the more EVs to low income?
So I know that already the objective is to launch an EV rebate program and prioritizing expanding rebates and accessibility in environmental justice communities. So this would increase the dollar amount available for rebates to go to those communities specifically. So instead of just saying we're gonna do a broad-based program, we're gonna say specifically. We wanna go where adoption is low and infuse kind of opportunities and expand access in those communities.
Is that based on geography or individual?
Yeah, so there are already identified data sources for what the census tracts, zip codes and communities are that have also been identified here. Some of the sources where you can access those are, ESD has access to those for some of their programs. You can also find them within racial equity. Cal and Virus Screen is the one that's most commonly referenced for some of the programs, depending on what types. And then the climate and economic justice screening tool that came out at the federal level a couple of years back. So yes, so we've already kind of done some of that work, but we actually the programs team has done the work to actually identify what those target communities are. And now that we know who those customers are and what those communities are, we're saying we want to expand programs specifically in those communities, expand EV adoption, add chargers, all of those things.
we can follow up on this particular, I'm not off the top of my head, I mean, different programs were taking a slightly different approach, so for this
Yes.
one, I think it is more individual based, but and it's not, we're trying, to people to need to demonstrate their income status, there's a lot of data now that's the wrong approach, for dignity and so forth, so, but we can follow up to the group about what the approach plan is gonna be there.
Question before we go to the next slide? Okay, next slide. Is our next steps. So we're gonna further refine the cost of service model so we get to our final rates. Those rate sheets are usually attached right to what goes to council, so we'll make sure that we make those available. We'll bring the power mix and rate recommendations for consideration. It still says February 11th, but we were pushed, as Zach said, to the 25th, so 2 weeks further into the month of February. And we would like to include a recommendation from the commission to go into that memo. And so on the next slide is some draft language, but you guys also have it in your hard copy.
Lena, before we go to that, could I make sure that anyone in the public has an opportunity to ask any questions, or if there are any other questions before we move to this? Any other thoughts,
And I
questions,
think
comments?
I'm sorry about that. I only took commissioner questions.
Okay, so
Yes.
getting back to my original question, what is the strategy? I'm looking at this thing, we're gonna take the days up to 249. Our goal was 180 in the reserve. What is the strategy behind taking it up a lot further?
So we, up until this year, it's been a steady increase of, you don't get the same for every dollar. A dollar buys you less next year and the year after and the year after. And so, just holding millions constant, that had been fewer and fewer days, right? So this is the first year we've had, maybe maybe the end is in sight, right? We've sort of gotten our hands around this thing, and maybe we can take our foot off the, whatever your analogy is, right? Take our foot off the accelerator, and maybe we can start sort of giving the cash back. And that is, the plan is to be at 180 days.
So the goal is still solid.
The goal is still solid.
Okay.
And so what we talked about, bill credits and so forth. Last meeting, unfortunately you missed it, we went deep on why would you ever need 6 months and all that. And I can give you a separate, discussion on that if you want.
No, I'm okay with that. It's just, getting way above it is my concern. And again, it's a concern that Essentially Clean Energy could face scrutiny or criticism for taking the reserve way above the goal. Because in essence, you're taking money away from the customers.
Yes. Yep.
And I want SJC to succeed.
Yeah, no, all points well taken. I don't know that it makes it better, but all of the CCAs around us have this kind of cushion.
Is that right? That big?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of, the dog who caught the car. And so we're trying to think about, how do you do this the right way, responsibly?
All right.
And I know I also missed that last meeting, but I have also heard that another way to look at it as well, at least, is that when you go back and you look at those years where there were pricing that was more expensive, because back then we didn't have a cushion to fall back on. And where many CCAs use that is to rely on that when that weird pivot happens. You're not going out and borrowing expensive money, you know that you have it there and it's status quo and it's not a rate spike and all of those things that happen when you're reacting in crisis mode because you specifically earmarked something for a rainy day. And there have been, a couple of CCAs that needed it during that time, during the pandemic where load was weird and sketchy and costs were high.
I did have one clarifying question. On the pricing and product considerations slide, under the improving affordability, there is this possibility of 1% improvement to discount for green source. But then there's also some product and program options where it sounds like the recommendation would be to fund those through some rate increase. So if you did elect to go through this discount route and through some of these product or program options, would you then expect as a customer the net to be, your discount to be somewhat below a 1% improvement?
Gosh, it's a good question.
Can you
Yeah,
put
can you
up
go back to that slide? I think that's.
And so that
And one more there.
we didn't spend a ton of time here, but this is,
I guess one slide, yeah, there you go.
These can be done sort of in concert. They can be individual. It's sort of your a la carte menu, if you will. And just trying to get an understanding of what things cost, like what your trade-offs could be. So sorry, can you ask your question again?
Sure. So, if you did elect to say we want to make a 1% improvement to the discount for Green Source,
Yeah.
but we also want to implement some of these product options or say some program, because the recommendation would be to fund those products or programs through rate increases, your net improvement would change as a function of that. Is that correct?
Yes, they would counterbalance each other.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
Can we back up one slide to the bars?
One more.
Last year's rate was both a rate increase at the beginning of the year and a rate decrease in the middle of the year, correct?
Yes.
And what we see, if we add those numbers up, that was your average for the year based on the timing and stuff like that, which is, that's what Excel's for. Okay, but that's what that was, right? And so we're actually talking about how big a percent decrease going from the sum of those numbers from the last bar, from the next to the last bar?
So I mean, decrease from here.
What's the percent change?
It's 8%.
8? Okay. Yeah. And so on that 8%, moving on to the next slide or either way, I mean, we can see the money here. The last bars add up to 13.8, if they still do. It changes. Okay. So take the 13.8, which is an 8% rate reduction, thanks to where we are. So can we move on to the menu that Ryan was talking about? Yeah, that one. So from that 13.8, we can increase our renewable content by adding a 20th of a cent, if I get that right, to the rate. Right? So, wow, that's pretty. So if I look at 1% increase is 0.003, 0.005, so let's say 0.004. If we did 10, that would be 0.4, right? If we did a 10% increase in our renewable content, it would be a 0.4 of a cent increase. So instead of being 13.8, it would be 14.2.
It's not clear that it'll be linear.
No, the way they're describing it is linear. These are rate.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, and that would cost about $10 million. 10 to 20.
Okay, that'd be 10 to 20. And back to the rate bars. So instead of getting an 8% reduction, we might have, I can't do that kind of arithmetic in my head in public or even at home, but they would still have a substantial rate decrease. So we do have a sort of headroom here,
Yes.
keeping the 8% sacred. I'm not going to.
The 8 million.
Genuflect or
Yeah.
anything, but
Yeah.
but keeping the 8, we have headroom to have a substantial increase in our environmental goal. Okay, I think that's interesting. I think that's something that many of you might, I'm guessing, think interesting. I mean, that's why many of us are here.
May I take a crack at summarizing what I heard? So I think we had a singular event moving the whole city to a CCA, and that's a one-time event, a blessed event that cannot happen again. That was the creation of the CCA, moved everyone to it. At any given time, anyone in the CCA can elect to move back to PG&E and get out. So I think it's sacrosanct that we keep the numbers low enough that people are not encouraged to move out of the CCA, because the whole point of having the CCA is for the climate, the climate control, where we can control the mix better than PG&E. So the discount has to be the highest priority, I think, and then from that, the efforts to control the greenhouse gas emissions are the next priority. If you don't get the first, you run the risk of permanently losing the second. Right? Is that my understanding?
I mean, I think there are others in the room who would flip the two and say that the climate goals and progress is more important than the discount is.
Oh, right, but you can't get to that if people leave because
You
it's so
can't get there if
expensive.
people
Right.
leave, but
They didn't leave when we were higher,
Right.
right? We were
it's
substantially
important for those of
above
you
and there
that
was
don't
not
remember,
any-
while we were higher, we also offered a product that was the same price as PG&E, which we've put back on the shelf. So we could sleep at night by saying we did have something that people could buy that was the same price as PG&E. But
But not many people took it, or did they?
very few people took it. No, I mean, you're right. Most people just didn't know what was going on.
Most people don't.
Yeah, right.
My electric bill is 17 pages. It includes gas and some other things, but most people's have more pages than they want to read. And I think it was Lori who commented that most people spend less than 3 minutes a year thinking about their electric bill. So
Yeah, and I
I
don't
didn't
know
mean
if
to interrupt your
PG&E
flow.
would
You
make,
were-
yeah, okay, so I'm just making sure that the dynamics aren't such that we lose people because we are perceived as more expensive.
and that's real important. We don't want to lose people.
Because we had a one-time event where we got everybody by the creation of the CCA, but we couldn't do that again.
And I mean, and given all the talk about electricity affordability, I think it's great to be able to show up with
Continue
you know,
to-
to be able, well, and be able to
So-
show, hey, rates are going
But
down.
my whole point was to go back to the original note where you sort of summarize what we want. So protecting the rates is important in order to keep people on the program, and then reducing the emissions is our next rate, and the ancillary programs only to the extent that they meet the climate goals.
Mhm.
Or demonstrably meet the climate goals. So.
I think one thing to keep in mind is the price of renewable energy credits right now is extremely high. I think, we love to be more renewable, but I think as the year progresses and hopefully we see some better pricing, we'd be in a better position to consider improving our carbon
But
content.
the benefit of having the CCA is that's a policy goal of the CCA.
Mhm.
And in order to meet that policy goal, we need to make sure as many people stick with it as possible
Yep.
and don't abandon it because of the price. So that's all the point I wanted to make.
But the numbers here are based on the current costs of these things that might go down, so it means we might be able to do even more if they go down. They might not go down either.
But I was just trying to simply summarize the position of the committee, if that makes sense. So just that, because just touching because the last slide is the policy language. I want to make sure everybody is actually aligned by that.
I think it's just I think, I know where you're coming, and I agree, but I think that there's so much going on. There's a lot of dynamic issues here that I think it doesn't allow us to, generally we can say that, but at the same time, we need to look at the other factors that are at play.
So I get that issue is the final slide. Do we affirm the final slide? Because I think that's the whole point of this presentation discussion was that the committee makes a statement on behalf of San Jose Clean Energy to the city council, and that was the last slide, and thank you for drafting that. That's really useful.
Thank you. Do you want to go back to that just so everybody can see it on the big screen?
Because I kind of looked at that and I just wanted to make sure that.
And thank you for that summary, because I think that's a helpful lens to kind of look at this. So we have put together some draft language for inclusion in the memo, which we now know will be going 2 weeks later. But reaffirming that we presented our preliminary rates and that the commission agreed with the staff on the recommendation to set the green source rates as low as possible. I like that, which kind of goes back to that, right? While ensuring that the revenues cover costs. So do we have any suggested or recommended edits to this? Or do you feel that this aligns with what we've discussed so far?
Through all this, I'm kind of curious, what's Ruth's take on some of this? You've
You
watched
were
all
quiet.
this discussion for a long time.
There's a lot of discussion and looks good to me. I don't have any comments.
Well, then I'm gonna end my presentation on that note. I know that you guys have probably want to ask if there's any public comment on this, so I'll have a seat. If there's no other questions for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any comment from the commission on the draft? Any public comment? Do I have a motion to, oh, go ahead.
I like this write-up very much. I like where we're going. We're going back to the bars, and it's been a long time, and until now, we've been lucky maybe not to lose customers because we've not really given them a deal.
It was very, very hard to reacquire a lost customer.
It costs, customer acquisition is a big deal. The thing that sort of has come up in the past, came up in prior meetings that Bill and I raised, is that the level of reserves, we're sort of treating that what we've already got, we're gonna hang on to, and we're gonna add 8 million more to it because the bankers say that. And we're sort of accepting that essentially. And I'm not quite ready to accept that myself. I like this, it doesn't really apply to that. But in the background, we're talking about 340, how many, the numbers changed, right? How many, what the reserves at the end of this year?
To reach 25?
25.
325 million.
325 million. And I remember Ruth and I, we were back sweating over 180 million and thinking, that seems like a lot. Now, we're closing in on twice that, and it almost sounds like it's a Hotel California kind of thing that, once the money's in the reserve pot, it can't leave. That kind of bothers me, all right? I don't want to sort of leave it that way, at least myself. That bothers me. I don't know if that's widely shared. I like everything you're proposing here, but I don't want that to be lost going forward. And I don't know what the options are, Zach, so maybe you have a plan.
How about we, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how about we come back in a couple months with an update on what we hear from the money men about what bill credits look like and the mechanism and the timing, the sequence, so that I make good on what I'm saying about like the way that we can give reserves back. So we put that, I don't think it's gonna be next week, but maybe 4 months or 6 months, we agree to do that. How's that sound?
I would like to see that. Thank you.
I felt that the last sentence conveyed that point,
Yeah.
at least to the level of detail that we can manage in this meeting,
Yeah.
so.
I move we accept.
Sorry, go ahead. Ruth, go ahead.
No, I
second.
I second.
I only have one comment, and it's an edit comment that you need to add the word, which it is hoped. There's just one little minor, that's a real minor point, which said, which it hoped.
Line down.
Should be which it,
Oh, which it hoped
it is hoped,
included.
right?
So
It's a minor,
Is.
which is hoped,
Yeah, so
right?
it was supposed to be the
Yes.
commission, which the commission hoped included the larger.
Yeah.
Okay,
or-
I got you.
Yes, yeah, it's a minor point, but just to clean it up a little bit. That's my only
Did you get that,
comment.
Leticia?
Which the commission hoped. Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion with that minor change, and a second. Do I have would the commissioners please raise their hand to support, all those who support the memo? And any commissioners against with a no? The motion passes unanimously. Fantastic. Thank you, thank you. Thank you all for your patience with all of our questions, really appreciate that.
Complicated thing.
Yeah, it is.
One question while we're transitioning. You stated that the cost, clean energy cost was really high. Is the clean energy cost still lower, I hope, than gas and coal and whatever?
Oh, the,
Because I say this in my climate reality talks, that the cost of clean energy is now less than gas and all the rest of them. Is that true?
I actually don't have enough knowledge about, gas and coal to,
All right.
to
But
that
you just know
question.
that the clean energy costs have gone up. All right.
He's talking about like, if you were gonna buy a short-term, a short-term rec, there's a squeeze right now because of all the corporate, trying to do the. I think the answer is yes, but I'll.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure I don't get called out by somebody saying, oh. I'm
Okay,
getting a talking to, so.
Moving on, all right. All right, so moving on to the delivery of the report on cool roofs by an ad hoc committee of one. And so it's a lengthy report, and what I'm gonna do, I'm hoping that you'll have a chance to at least somewhat look at it, and I just want to remind everyone what this report is intended to do, and I think you all looked at the purpose of it. Even though there's a lot of data and statistics in this report, this really is designed to simply turn the corner and have climate smart and environmental services start to look at cool roofs a little more and add those to the educational component, add it to the climate smart plan. If you looked at I was going to bring that thick climate smart plan with me. There's only one reference to, there's a reference to green roofs, but no reference to cool roofs. And if you also look at what we were talking about as a city back in, I think, around 2011. Thank you, Victor. You gonna be back? Okay. We actually, in the Green Vision Plan, actually talked about cool roofs. So somehow it managed to, and all the incredible work that we've done with the climate smart plan and everything, we seem to somehow lose track of cool roofs. I'm not saying it's the most important thing to resolve our urban heat island problem, but I think it is a component that we should not ignore. And so this is really meant to simply do that, is to bring it forward as something that we want to consider, add to our climate smart plan and some of our other educational materials. And by the way, cool roofs are now becoming much more in vogue. You probably, if you saw the different cities way back in 2011 that were even concerned about it, but it's now becoming more important. And in fact, the California Energy Commission, has set up requirements for us we are in, San Jose's in the Climate 4 zone, and there are requirements in Title 24, Section 6 for cool roofs for our area. Yeah, Bill?
So I know that these probably fluctuate all over the place, but what is there a ballpark number you can put on the expense of a cool roof versus a regular roof?
It is a little more expensive, but that's hard, and there's so many factors involved with cool roofs. There's all kinds of different materials.
I know,
You
that's
saw
why
that.
I was couching my
Yeah.
comment because it goes all over the place, but yeah.
But in fact, I just we just installed a cool roof on our house about 4 months ago.
Now, was that a new roof or overlay?
It was, we had a problem with our old roof, so when they replace the roof, they take up all the old roof and
Right.
replace it.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it is more expensive. But at the same time, California is telling us we need to do this on new buildings. So for me, this report is not meant to say, do we or don't we do cool roofs necessarily as a community, but simply how do we address the details of that? But rather, we need to let the public know that cool roofs are now, in some situations, a requirement. And they're an opportunity to actually reduce our urban heat island impact.
We're in the process in the villages of we replace a village at a time. It could be 70 to 300 roofs at once.
Wow.
And so my question has to do with, well, I guess it's up to each individual homeowner then, right?
Well, I don't know how you.
The roofs are owned
your commu-
by the villages.
Yeah, so that would probably be that's all sort of a community issue,
Right.
I would say.
Yeah, because I want to make a presentation based on what you've got here
Okay,
to management to take a look at this. I was just, like I say, I was curious about the cost just because that could kill the whole
mhm.
thing.
It depends on what kind of, I think and I can't speak to this because there are so many different materials that you can use for cool roofs, but I would guess to say that asphalt shingles are probably there's less cost increase for asphalt shingles, but I'm not sure. Also, you have to look at all like we got a shingle that from Certainty that is, well, we bought an expensive shingle just because for the look, for one thing. But in terms of the cool roof aspect, we could have gotten a cheaper shingle that was a simpler look. But where am I going with this? But it's not enormously more expensive. Frankly, what really costs more than anything in a new roof is the labor, by far. And the materials, cool roof materials weren't that expensive. I could try to try to do comparison for you. Now, here's another thing though that probably you noticed, is I'm very excited about, which I'm gonna be talking with the folks at Lawrence Berkeley, is the new opportunity in the materials that they've developed that actually not only just work on the solar reflectance and the emittance, the thermal emittance, but in the summer, but they also somehow the same roofing materials but different components will shut down when they don't need to be used for this heating in the summer, and the other materials in that roof, the shingle or whatever, will then work to actually absorb heat in the winter based on temperature ratings. So that's pretty exciting, which means I can't imagine why we wouldn't try to do that. I'm not gonna suggest that cool roofs are something that, from an equity point of view, that lower income people could necessarily afford. I'm coming at this more from a climate point of view, that, for those who can do this and for non-residential buildings where they're going to probably do this, we need to have more visibility for cool roofs and promote it a little bit more. And certainly the ability to cut down on their air conditioning costs in a large building certainly outweighs what they might feel is slightly more expensive. But I think for non-residential, there's a lot of materials that are very inexpensive, and they're doing that already anyway, so, yeah. So any other questions about it?
Do the cool roofs have asbestos in some of their materials?
Did I say asbestos? Asphalt?
No. I thought I had heard that they don't have any asbestos in these cool
I
roofs.
don't think so.
Okay, I looked at the materials, I don't see it. I don't know why I had heard that at some point before.
Not that I'm
Maybe it's just the
aware of.
asphalt, just asphalt. Okay,
Not that
that's
I'm
great,
aware of.
that's great. Thank you.
And so really this is meant to be something that I hope that with enough information here that environmental services it'll ease their burden to try to, if possibly, to add some information into the Climate Smart Plan as appropriate, and to also start to provide some public outreach along with all the other urban heat island climate mitigation work that we're doing.
Yeah, just my last comment. We have a village that is about 300 homes that cannot support solar. And I'm wondering if, because of the structure of the roof, we're talking about a coating maybe that can, at least if we can't put solar on these, we can maybe do that and reduce the heat issues in the summer and that might be a possible solution, which is
Mhm.
okay.
Exactly, and, right, that will certainly reduce air conditioning needs in the summertime, which is what in San Jose, in this zone, I think our concern is more about summer heat than it is worrying
Yeah,
about
it's gonna get worse,
cold
yeah.
temperatures, right? Yeah, any other questions? Should I read this motion, or Ruth, would you like to read the motion? Here, let me give you my page here. I think I might have changed it a little bit. See if I can find it.
The motion to approve.
Actually, I think Ann, here we go.
I think I have it. Oh, no, that was
It's
different.
slightly changed.
Oh, okay, this is different. Okay. Okay. So just read this paragraph?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay. So, cool roof awareness report, motion to approve. The San Jose Climate Advisory Commission approves the transmittal of the cool roof awareness report to Environmental Services, Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement, and the Transportation Environment Committee for their review and consideration. This report is intended to provide information that will support updates to the Climate Smart Plan, Climate Smart Challenge, and other related city climate initiatives, as well as public educational outreach initiatives. The goal is to build awareness for California cool roof standards and requirements and to promote installation of higher rated cool roof materials in San Jose beyond the minimum state requirements for both residential and non-residential buildings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Bill seconds. Thank you. And all those in favor of approving the cool roof report, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. Thank you very much. It's passed unanimously.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
then Leticia, we need a comma after planning.
Okay.
Thank you, Ruth. Thanks. Well, thank you guys very much.
Thank you for all that work.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, beautiful.
Thank you. And Bill, I'll give you a call and maybe I can figure out how to get some of your questions answered.
Okay.
So now we have, we're moving on to a report on the artificial turf installation on city property letter that Manny put together.
Okay, so just starting off, just like a minor alteration to the wording of that. This in particular is not going to be on city property. It's proposed at the county fairgrounds, but the city is contributing funding for that project. So for the background, on November 5th, the City Council voted to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with Santa Clara County and the Earthquakes to provide $6 million towards the construction of,
How many then? 1 million?
$6 million, towards the construction of public soccer fields of approximately 10 acres on the fairgrounds. And these were proposed to be entirely of artificial turf. Now, as this relates to the work of the commission, artificial turf generally has significantly higher emissions than natural grass, particularly based on what can be adjusted. So for natural grass, there can be significant reductions in emissions by using organic management methods, by not using energy-intensive synthetic fertilizers, and also by replacing gas-powered maintenance equipment with electric alternatives. So particularly when those methods are used, natural grass has very low lifetime greenhouse gas emissions compared to artificial turf. So the greenhouse gas emissions are the first part of it. Around the world, plastics represent a little over 3% of annual greenhouse gas emissions, which is larger than aviation. And artificial turf is a large amount of bulk of plastic. According to Sierra Club figures, the amount of acreage that is proposed for artificial turf would end up being approximately 100 tons of plastic in that artificial turf. So the first contribution to climate change is in the emissions, but then contributing to being non-resilient to the effects of climate change, it also contributes significantly to the urban heat island effect by trapping a lot of heat, in some instances even more than a black spot. You can see, perhaps you could scroll to the page with the figures in here. Some local examples. So this is generally what artificial turf produces in localized warming. And this is particularly concerning given the location because the region surrounding the county fairgrounds already has some of the lowest canopy of anywhere, lowest tree coverage of anywhere in San Jose. So this would be only further exacerbating that urban heat island effect compared to natural grass, which you can see the farthest to the right is natural grass as opposed to the artificial turf and is significantly cooler on a warm day. And then this localized warming is, of course, harmful to any visitors or athletes on the grass during even relatively mild sunny days. And then it further heats up the surrounding neighborhoods and stores heat in warm days. And lastly, I wanted to address a few of the concerns that have been raised in conversations thus far between artificial turf and natural grass. First, when it comes to price, most analyses have found that lifetime costs of natural grass fields are actually significantly lower than artificial turf due to the infill construction is very significant with artificial turf, and it needs to be replaced every 7 to 10 years. When it comes to playable hours, first, San Jose, because of the climate, we receive less rainfall than many other areas where this has been studied, so that is somewhat less of a concern of natural grass becoming unplayable in heavy rains. And particularly, we receive more warm sunny days, during which artificial turf can become unplayable due to the high heat. And that tend towards heat is only going to continue as the climate warms. So there will be times when it is unsafe to play on artificial turf fields due to the heat, which will either need to be addressed by cooling them with water, which will negate any water savings from artificial turf, or they will become unplayable. And even that water cooling has drawbacks such as carrying pollutants into water bodies. And then finally, as was kind of shown already there, the water use, there's a lot of water use in the production of artificial turf, and then there would be water use in maintaining it to clean it and keep it usable during warm days, as well as the pollution that comes from the time that it's on the ground, as well as later disposal to water. So in terms of price, playable hours, and water use, I think that there are significant enough positives in natural grass to merit recommending natural grass as opposed to artificial turf in this project that the city is helping to fund.
Is it my understanding also, Manny, that that artificial turf gives off microplastics?
Yes.
That can get into the water system, that can get onto our kids, can, basically get everywhere. And so that would be another major concern of mine, to have artificial turf is really not a good thing for the health as well.
Yes, there are a lot of, particularly around microplastic and chemical pollution of artificial turf, even beyond the greenhouse gas emissions and warming. And anybody who would like to look further into that, I've also linked the Santa Clara County Medical Association's letter in opposition to recommending against installation of artificial turf at a school, and that has a lot more very detailed specifics on the risk of injury and chemical exposure.
And just one other comment, since I'm also on the Santa Clara County Sustainability Commission, we are petitioning the Board of Supervisors against going for the artificial turf as well. We've written some very strong letters against that, just so you all know.
So in this case, Manny, is water reduction the main argument that's been made for turf so far? Are you familiar with?
I believe in this case in particular, the main argument has been playable hours.
For turf?
For turf.
Okay, interesting.
Because of the inability to play on natural grass in heavy rain events. Even that, though, can be addressed to a degree by proper design and management, like for drainage.
Are you aware of any, has anyone done any kind of quantitative comparison and ballpark even for the amount of water usage for natural grass rather versus turf?
I don't have any specifically in mind that have done that.
I was just curious. Okay.
So if we recommend that they choose natural grass instead of artificial, we don't know the water that would be required to water the grass. How much impact to water system that would be?
No, I don't know, but I think that would be an additional thing that we could encourage them to. Of course, they have to ensure that, but I don't think that has been even examined yet by the city.
But the cost of maintenance, if you look at the overall cost of maintenance of the two, you have to replace that natural grass how often? I mean, the artificial turf, 6 to 8 years, whatever and there's a disposal cost. There's, if you look at the cost comparison, maybe not necessarily the water usage, but the cost comparisons, there's a huge advantage to maintaining natural grass, because you don't have to go through. And then what do you do with that artificial turf when you're done? You plow it under? I mean, there are mounds of artificial turf sitting around right now. They're trying to figure out what to do with.
Yeah.
So.
It's like there's no good solution because either way we're using resources of some sort.
Right,
or-
and the production is, I think, as Manny was pointing out, it costs a lot, takes a lot of resources, including water, in the manufacturing process. So I don't know that there's a huge difference. It may be a little bit of a water savings with artificial turf, but I don't think it's a huge difference, because you still got to clean it. You still got to use water to hose it down and all that kind of stuff.
And I think there should be a distinction made between turf and ornamental lawns. I mean, clearly ornamental lawns are a good place to reduce water reduction, but in this case, it may take more water to do the natural turf for this situation, but I do think that Manny makes some superb points here about the cure is worse than the disease.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, so I appreciate the work, and I think I'm sent. That's exactly. I think both of you are saying things. Like, well, we still have the water problem, and the answer is, if this is a value that we have, sports and play, that this is a place where we would want to invest our scarce water resources against the environmental risks of the alternative. Right. So towards that end, I would be inclined to completely approve the report as written.
Could we ask that they water with gray water, not fresh water, just make sure that to know, with.
I know I know that the city invests in non-potable water distribution for that. So absolutely, not non-potable is exactly what you want to do there. But I think.
You think we should put that in our letter?
Well, I don't know if it's something that it all the systems already on non-potable water. If it's something if it's something we have to specifically specify, can this be done?
I think that is the case, but it probably wouldn't hurt to add it.
What do you add? I mean, you're not saying you're not gonna add something that says you need to use non-potable water.
Yeah.
Because that would be a huge expense. You'd have to repipe all your water sources, because it's on a totally different piping system I know this because we have issues with the villages. We'd love to use we have our golf courses water with non-potable water, but we can't get it up to the residences because because of the expense of putting in a whole new piping system to.
Well, that's a really good point, and so I sort of agree with you, although I have a feeling that the fairgrounds, given
Hopefully it's
it's
non-potable.
probably, right, non-potable anyway, but you're making a good point.
Yeah, and it runs the risk of distracting from the core point of the environmental.
Right.
I mean, I think environmental stewardship of turf management should be pretty well understood across the city without many having to explicitly state it. And I think a lot of this is news to me. This is fantastic, and the references are outstanding, so.
It's a really, really, really good letter.
Yeah.
You did great work.
Yeah, great work. I just had one very minor edit. I went over it with Manny before the meeting, and that was to go ahead and put in the link to the November 5th city council meeting, and I sent it already to Leticia, if that would be okay with everybody. That way, if it's somebody who's outside the city, it's kind of hard, as you know, Karen, to get into the city's
Absolutely.
agenda and such. So then if you put the link in, then they can just click on it and see what exactly the city council read or what staff presented. So is that okay?
So if you want to make a motion, Manny, or,
Can I make comments now, or should it be afterwards?
if you have any comments, it should be now. Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to let everybody know, I'm a landscape architect, and to answer to the concern about water, although I don't work with play surfaces, I do know that there are drought-tolerant turfs, and perhaps there could be wording that you could try to install drought-tolerant turfs, and I don't know what kind of requirements they would have for the play surfaces, but I think there's more effort trying to make drought tolerance for the play surfaces as well. And I think it's also important that you consider multi-solving. So the fact that it's probably not using more water, because there's also the water that's used in the manufacturing of the artificial turf, as well as the maintenance of it, because it needs to be watered down fairly regularly. I know people who have artificial turf in their gardens, they actually install irrigation because it needs to be watered on a fairly regular basis. I don't know specific to the play surfaces, but that's something to think about, as well as the fact that all of the other, if you weigh artificial turf versus natural grass, there's more injuries with artificial turf. These are co-benefits. There's the pollution into our water systems. There's all of the energy and the pollution in the manufacture of it. And then where are we going to put it? If it has to be changed out that frequently, is it going to be going in it, and then it's never going to degrade? So if it's going into natural land or into the landfill, it's going to be there forever. And we have the zero waste element of our plan as well. So this is just increasing the waste.
I appreciate that, and I think that addresses my concern of just not mentioning water at all as it relates to natural grass. I think if we could add a term of being drought tolerant, that would assuage my concerns.
Would you like to add an amendment? Is that possible?
If you want to just go ahead and, Manny, why don't you provide a motion and with the adjustments included?
So I have it tentatively here at the end of the third to last paragraph. So where it says, as climate change increases the frequency of heat waves while decreasing the frequency of precipitation, that sentence. To add, there also exists drought-tolerant turf grass varieties that can minimize the water use of natural grass. We encourage the city to examine these options.
Sounds great.
And then I have a question for Ann. So how does this work? So it was already, approved, something was approved on November 5th already. So what would be the process for his letter to get to the council?
Yeah, so after a letter is approved by the commission, then it's brought back to whichever department, usually ESD.
Okay,
If ESD is like fully supportive, we can actually add it to it as an agenda item at Transportation and Environment.
okay,
Otherwise, anything is submitted for the public record through the Rules and Open Government.
okay.
So at a minimum, it's recorded on the public record and it can be agendized from there. And if the council member wants to discuss it, they can. Or depending on what leadership says in ESD, then it can go also be created as an agenda item for full discussion.
Okay, so I assume like the final contract isn't done for like buying astroturf, artificial turf at this?
For this item, so I haven't been too involved. I have heard some discussions about it, but I don't believe so.
Okay,
So
Okay,
I
okay.
believe this is still being discussed, but yeah, I'm not like super on top of this particular item.
okay.
I have a question. Should we make it more broad than just the fairgrounds then? Like all the dog parks or
Well,
like,
I think for now, I think we better, for
Yeah.
today,
yeah.
it's kind of late. I mean, I think we could do it later,
Right,
but I think
right.
we want to do it
And I
one
will-
item for now, and then we can look at that
Because
later.
specifically, we're objecting to the $6 million
Yeah,
contribution of the city to the
But yeah,
fairground.
we
And
can-
let's win that one.
And I do feel like generally it is easier to make a case about a specific item that is gonna be on the agenda. So like in this case, you have something very specific to talk about. I do think that you generally, it's a little bit easier to get council's recommendation on something that's very specific and on the agenda already, so.
yeah, that's a good point.
Is there a motion to approve with the amendments?
I'll make a motion to approve with the amendment. Second.
Ryan, seconds. All those in favor of approving Manny's letter? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? It is approved unanimously. So awesome, very good letter.
Great
Yeah,
job.
thank you, Manny.
I'm very, very excited about where we're headed with with the work and the recommendations that that are coming from us, so that's really excellent. All right, so we are closing in on the meeting, so let's see, where are we here? Is there any other, are there any other potential, so we're really gonna talk about the next meeting. Are there any other potential agenda items for the next meeting? And what do we have for the next meeting?
Let me pull it up, I'm sorry. I will add that I was reached out to by someone in clean energy about potentially wanting to bring an item to the March meeting. I know there was some discussion and I wasn't at that meeting, and I don't know, there was potentially some talk about moving the date, so
Yeah,
I don't know if that's something we wanted to discuss, but I can pull up the work plan as well.
Moving the date of the March meeting?
Yeah.
And Ruth, do you want to speak to that?
yeah, so, San Jose Clean Energy has already approved, wants to distribute the energy from a couple of new transmission lines that are going in a few years. And there's been some meetings on that already with Transportation and Environment Committee. And so there's going to be a special meeting in March where they're going to have some options presented to the city council. And so I'd like the commission to weigh in on that. I can't really discuss it right now because it's not on the agenda. But if we were to discuss it, it'd have to be before March 21st. And Zach was going to check into that.
Yeah. So the meeting is Friday, or as currently tentatively scheduled, this special council meeting is Friday the 21st, and the memo for that would post 10 days before it's supposed to. post 10 days before, so then we, in this case, I don't think there's gonna be much available to talk about here before the memo post, so I think we'd wanna time the meeting to be between the 11th and the 21st. So
moving the meeting forward.
that's right, pulling the meeting up
Okay.
in March, yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
earlier in March.
So it would be like the 13th.
Something like that, if that, I mean, we need to talk about what days work for people.
Yeah, I have the other commission meeting on the 4th, which is why I missed the last
Okay, okay.
because there was a conflict because of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and we can't discuss it, but one thing I can send to Leticia to send to the commissioners is the memos and presentations regarding San Jose Power, which would be we've gone over it at the meeting. I don't think you were there because it was earlier when we had a discussion here on San Jose Power. You were already here, right? Yeah. So and then one of the issues is who would distribute it? It would be the city or PG&E. So that's why I want us to weigh in on it. So I can, the most recent memorandums I can send to Leticia, send to the commission before the meeting. So I guess we look at it.
So I'm curious, we've got that in play that would suggest that to discuss it, we need to meet earlier. But Anne, are there other issues happening that would either encourage us to meet sooner in March or won't be ready for us that soon?
So the other two items are the Climate Smart semi-annual update and the transportation semi-annual update. I don't know, I can't speak on behalf of transportation, but I feel like for the Climate Smart semi-annual update, we should be able to bring you something at an earlier date. It may be a little draftier than it would be a week later, but I still think we could at least, pull together some bullet points at a minimum to give you an idea of what that's gonna look like. But I can double check with transportation whether that's an issue, but if it's a week, I would be shocked if they wouldn't be okay with that. But I can double check on their behalf. And then I don't know if you know anything about the item that Phil wanted to bring
Oh, yeah.
in March, if that would be an issue for him to go a week
Right,
earlier.
that's starting to get pretty, no, that wouldn't be an issue to
Okay.
go a week earlier.
It would be a lot on the agenda for
That
March,
would be,
but-
yeah. And so that is council asked us to, probably 6 months ago now, to more systematically incorporate criteria in as we select projects to buy power from, that we add labor practice more formally, as well as environmental aspects of the projects. So we've been working with stakeholders and other CCAs and things like that, and we're getting closer to that time. So we'd like to get the commission's input on that.
So does that suggest that, if everybody's got their calendars handy, would that suggest that, am I right, that March 13th
Yeah, it worked for me.
might be
And just
Thursday, the 13th?
Yeah, and just to clarify, that's gonna be a study session and city manager staff is gonna issue a memorandum. So we wouldn't be having input like we normally do, like we did with the rates where we put in a paragraph. It would be a separate letter to council. It wouldn't be included because the memorandum would already be public. So just to clarify that for everybody. And I'd probably bring I could go ahead and review the draft and bring something for us to work with, but we'd work on it here.
Okay. So Ruth, what does that suggest for everyone? Does that suggest that we do want to meet earlier then to accommodate all of this? And so if we're sticking to Thursdays, and I think that Zach or Ruth, after the 11th, between the 11th and the 21st is the right timing. Would the 13th make sense?
You okay with me?
It works for me.
Okay, so to change that, can we just have a nodding heads, or do I need to have a motion for that meeting date change?
I can't remember what we did for the previous one. We might have taken a
Might-
vote just to
Might as well
formally,
do it.
because technically we're creating a special meeting and then we would be canceling the regular meeting.
Okay.
So it might just be good
Okay,
practice.
so would anyone like to make a motion for the 13th? Ruth, yes.
Yes.
Is there a second? Manny, you want a second? And all those in favor of moving our special meeting on the 13th and canceling the regular meeting? Aye. Any opposed? No, we're fine, so that works. Okay, excellent. And so then going back to that, other than this meeting change with the accommodating some new information, is there anything else that anybody wants to add as potential agenda items to that meeting? Anything else? No, we're good. So we've changed the regular meeting, or the special meeting now is on March 13th. Okay. And are there any other announcements or any other discussion for tonight? No, well, this has been, we actually, I think ending, what time is it?
9:01.
Wow, we're ending on time tonight. Excellent. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys, very much. All right.
I feel better about installing grass instead of turf in my backyard now. I'm just feeling guilty about it.
Now that you know, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's a crazy drought tolerant variety, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Alternate to her.
We actually had sprinkler problems and we let it die. And so we got the sprinklers changed and so.
Yeah, we have.
I just couldn't find it. I do have an artificial Christmas tree. I'm looking at that. I've had it for 20 years. Doesn't require any water.
That's right, exactly. Well, this was, I'm gonna have to do the earphones, but this actually helped a lot.
Yes, exactly.
To, and.
So yeah, I didn't have any ideas.
Are you working at all on the transportation plan?
This is what the reason I got
Some of the,
Oh, yes.
particular areas.
I want to postpone for a while you're thinking about it. This is more for you to talk about.
No, we'll do it. We'll do it. Just
We just
as much for me to educate myself
So you're not going to be
throw out a
working
couple
on
of
it?
ideas to see how they're reacting to. Do some
It's
probing
already, like,
ideas.
are they